Today we're diving into a role most families don't talk about, but so many people secretly live with: the scapegoat. That one person who always seems to carry the blame, the frustration, the shadow nobody else wants to face. Maybe you've been that person, or maybe you've seen it happen right in front of you. Have you ever noticed how in some families, there's always that one person who gets blamed for everything? Even when the mistake is tiny, or honestly not even their fault, somehow all the frustration just gets dumped on them. It's almost like they're the family's emotional trash can.
I know exactly what you mean. It reminds me of those tense family dinners where, on the surface, everything looks fine, but you can feel something heavy in the air. Then, one small thing goes wrong, and suddenly everyone turns on the same person. It's not just about that spilled drink or a bad joke. It's like they become the lightning rod for the whole family's stress.
And what's wild is that it can happen to anyone, even Marilyn Monroe or Prince Harry. People you'd think had it all, but behind closed doors, they got labeled as the problem, the one who absorbs all the stuff no one wants to face. That's the role of the scapegoat, right?
Yeah, and the impact doesn't stop at just feeling bad in the moment. If you grow up as that scapegoat, those labels get under your skin. You start to question your worth, your place in the world, whether you even deserve kindness. It shapes how you see yourself, and it echoes into every relationship you have afterward.
That actually makes me wonder, why do families set up these roles at all? I mean, you'd think families are supposed to protect you, not pick someone to carry all their issues.
Funny thing is, it's usually not even conscious. Psychologists call it projective identification. The family can't handle their own shame or anger or fear, so they kind of shove those feelings onto someone else. It's like, we don't want to see this in ourselves, so you'll carry it for us.
Michael Jackson's story really shows that, doesn't it? He was both praised for his talent and blamed for the family's struggles. It's heartbreaking, he once said. He gave his whole childhood to the family business, but it was never enough.
And it's not just Michael either. Think of Kurt Cobain labeled the weird one after his parents' divorce, or Diana, Princess of Wales, who became the royal scapegoat. What's so tragic is that these people are often the most sensitive, the ones who actually see the truth about what's happening.
You know, what fascinates me is how families almost instinctively try to keep things stable, even when that stability is actually pretty unhealthy. Psychologists call it family homeostasis. Instead of dealing with what's really going wrong, families just shift all the tension onto one person, the scapegoat, almost like using them as a pressure release valve so the whole system doesn't blow up.
That makes me think of how everyone in a family ends up playing some kind of assigned role, like they're acting out a script in a play. You've got the golden child who gets all the praise, the peacemaker who tries to calm everyone down, and then the scapegoat who takes the blame. It's wild how these roles keep everything running smoothly on the surface, even if one person is quietly paying the price for everyone else's comfort.
It reminds me of Christina Crawford's memoir, Mommy Dearest. On the outside, her mom, Joan Crawford, looked like this glamorous Hollywood icon. But behind closed doors, Christina was always called difficult and ungrateful. Writing that book was her way of finally breaking the silence about what she'd gone through, showing the world there was a whole different reality hiding behind that perfect image. But what's really tough is what happens to the person who's scapegoated. They start to build this false self, almost like putting on a mask just to get by. Suddenly, you're the polite one, the overachiever, always hoping if you just act right, maybe you'll finally belong.
It's heartbreaking, honestly.
By the way, if this conversation is resonating with you, take a second to subscribe and hit like. It's such a small thing, but it really helps us keep bringing these deeper stories to life.
Yeah, every click of support keeps the channel going, and honestly, it tells the algorithm that these conversations matter.
That really hits home. Once you've been put in that role, it's like you start to believe the story everyone tells about you. Even when you're successful, there's this voice whispering, maybe I really am the problem.
Absolutely. It seeps into every part of your life. Friendships, jobs, even how you relate to yourself. Whitney Houston talked about this. She felt like she was either her own worst enemy or her best friend, constantly wrestling with the blame she carried from her family and the outside world.
And then the sad irony is that the scapegoat is often the healthiest one in the family. They're the truth teller, the person who refuses to go along with denial. But because of that, they get exiled or silenced.
Which is wild, right? The person who's trying to break the cycle, who's actually the most aware, ends up being treated like a threat. But sometimes, that same awareness becomes their hidden superpower later on.
Speaking of superpowers, I love how you put that. The scapegoat's pain isn't just suffering, it can become this source of resilience and empathy. Oprah's story is a perfect example. She was blamed and rejected as a kid, but she transformed that pain into the wisdom and compassion that made her a global force.
Exactly, and that transformation doesn't happen overnight. It takes a ton of healing and a willingness to let go of the blame that was never yours to begin with. But once you realize you don't have to carry the family's stuff anymore, you get to figure out who you are outside of that old role.
And that's where things really start to shift. Suddenly, you realize your boundaries matter, your voice matters, and you start building relationships that are based on who you actually are, not just the role someone forced on you.
It reminds me of Lady Gaga. She was called weird growing up, even by her own family. But she held onto her difference, turned it into her strength, and made a career out of not fitting in. That's the hidden gift of the scapegoat. They become the ones who break the cycle and lead others to do the same.
People who grew up scapegoated can struggle to set boundaries, say no, or they might over-apologize for things that aren't their fault. Sometimes they go the complete opposite way and build these fierce walls, determined never to need anyone again.
Robin Williams is a classic example. He made millions of people laugh, but offstage he was wrestling with pain and always feeling like he needed to perform to deserve love. That mask can end up feeling suffocating, no matter how convincing it looks from the outside.
That actually reminds me of this old idea in myths. The outcast, the exile, is often the one who comes back with something valuable for everyone else. Being scapegoated can feel like exile, but it's often where people find the space to reinvent themselves.
Eminem's story is just that in real life. He was pushed out by his family, blamed for everything, and left to fend for himself. But all that rejection became fuel for his music, and in the end, his pain became the source of his creativity and his power.
So, if you reframe it, maybe being scapegoated isn't proof you were weak. Maybe it means your strength threatened the family's comfort zone. And now, that same strength can become the foundation for building your own story instead of living someone else's. And before we wrap up, if any of this hit home for you, we'd really love to hear your story or even just your thoughts on this format. We try to make these conversations as real as possible, and your feedback really shapes where we go next.
Seriously, drop a comment or a message. Sometimes just sharing, even in a small way, starts bigger conversations, and you never know who might need to hear it. Plus, every bit of support, likes, subscribes, all that helps us keep digging into the topics people care about most.
So, if you're listening and you've ever felt like the scapegoat, here's the real takeaway. You are not defined by what your family projected onto you. You get to decide what you carry forward and what you finally lay down.
That's such a powerful reminder. The story you were handed isn't the story you have to live. Like Maya Angelou said, bearing an untold story is agony, but telling it, living your truth, that's where freedom starts.
And honestly, the world needs more people who've turned that pain into wisdom. If you found yourself in this episode, know that your story isn't over. It's really just beginning.
Absolutely. Lay down the blame, step into your own light, and remember what once felt like your curse might actually be your greatest possibility. You're not the problem. You're the hope for something entirely new.